Chapter 25 The Great Glass Elevator. I've never seen anything like it, cried Mr. Wonka. The children are disappearing like rabbits. But you mustn't worry. They'll all come out in the wash. Mr. Wonka looked at the little group that stood behind him in the corridor. There was only 2 children now, Mike TV and Charlie Bucket. And there were 3 grown-ups, Mr. and Mrs. TV and Grandpa Joe. Shall we move on, Mr. Wonka asked. Oh, yes, cried Grandpa and Charlie together. My feet are getting tired, said Mike TV. I want to watch television. If you're so tired, then we better take the elevator, said Mr. Wonka. It's over here. Come on, in we go. He skipped across the passage to the double doors. The doors slid open and the 2 children and grown-ups went in. Now then, cried Mr. Wonka, which button shall we push first? Take your pick. Charlie Bucket stared at him in astonishment. These were the craziest elevators he had ever seen. There were buttons everywhere. The walls and even the ceilings were covered with rows and rows of small black push buttons. There must have been 1,000 of them on each wall, and another 1,000 on the ceiling. And now Charlie noticed that every single button had a tiny printed label beside it, telling you which room would be taken to if you pushed it. This isn't just an ordinary up and down elevator, announced Mr. Wonka proudly. The elevator can go sideways and long ways and slant ways and all the other ways you can think of. It can visit every single room in the whole factory, no matter where it is. You simply push the button and zing, you're off. Fantastic, murmured Grandpa Joe. His eyes were shining with excitement as he stared at the rows and rows. This whole elevator is made of thick, clear glass, Mr. Wonka declared. Walls, doors, ceilings, floors, everything is made of glass, so you can see out. But there's nothing to see, said Mike TV. Choose a button, said Mr. Wonka. The 2 children may each push one button. So take your pick. Hurry up. Quickly, Charlie started reading some of the labels alongside the button. The Rock Candy Mine, 10,000 feet deep. Corker ice skating rinks, said another. Then, strawberry juice water pistols. Toffee apple trees for planting out in your garden, all sizes. Exploding candies for your enemies. Luminous lollies for eating in bed at night. Mint jujubes for the boy next door. They'll give him green teeth for a month. Cavity-filled caramels, no more dentists. Stick jaw for talkative parents. Wriggle sweets that wriggle delightfully in your tummy after swallowing. Invisible chocolate bars for eating in class. Candy-coated pencils for sucking. Fizzy lemonade with swimming pools. Magic hand fudge. When you hold it in your hand, you'll taste it in your mouth. Rainbow drops, suck them, and you can spit in 6 different colors. Come on, cried Mr. Wonka. We can't wait all day. Isn't there a television room in all this lot? Asked Mike TV. Certainly there's a television room, said Mr. Wonka. There's a button over there. He pointed with his finger, and everybody looked. Television chocolate, it said on the tiny label beside the button. Whoopee! Shouted Mike TV. That's for me. He stuck out his thumb and pushed the button. Instantly there was a tremendous whizzing noise. The doors clanged shut, but the elevator leaped away as though it had been stung by a wasp. But it leapt sideways. And all the passengers except Mr. Wonka, who was holding onto the strap from the ceiling, were flung off their feet onto the floor. Get up, cried Mr. Wonka, roaring with laughter. But as they were staggering to their feet, the elevator changed directions and swerved violently round a corner, and they were off once more. Help! Cried Mike TV. Take my hand, madam, Mr. Wonka said gallantly. There you are. Now grab the strap. Everybody grab a strap. The journey's not over yet. Old Grandpa Joe staggered to his feet and caught hold of a strap. Little Charlie, who couldn't possibly reach as high as that, put his arms around Grandpa Joe's legs and hung on tight. The elevator rushed on at the speed of a rocket. Now it was beginning to climb. It was shooting up and up and up on a steep, slanty course as though it were climbing a small hill. Then suddenly, as though it had come to the top of the hill and gone over a precipice, it dropped like a stone, and Charlie felt his tummy coming right through his throat. And Grandpa Joe shouted, "Yippee! Here we go!" And Mrs. TV cried out, "The rope has broken! We're going to crash!" And Mr. Wonka said, "Calm yourself, my dear lady," and patted her comfortably on the arm. And then Grandpa Joe looked at Charlie, who was clinging to his legs, and said, "Are you all right, Charlie?" Charlie shouted, "I love it! It's like we're on a roller coaster." And through the glass walls of the elevator, as it rushed along, they caught sudden glimpses of strange and wonderful things going on in others' rooms. An enormous spout of brown sticky stuff oozing onto the floor. A great craggy mountain made entirely of fudge with Oompa Loompas, all roped together for safety, packing huge hunks of fudge out of the sides. A machine with white powder spraying out of it like a snowstorm. A lake of hot caramel with steam coming off of it. A village of Oompa Loompas with tiny houses and streets and hundreds of Oompa Loompa children, no more than 4 inches high, playing in the streets. And now the elevator began flattening out again, but it seemed to be going faster than ever. And Charlie could hear the scream of the wind outside as it hurled forward, and it twisted and it turned, it went up and it went down, and "I'm going to be sick!" yelled Mrs. TV, turning green in the face. "Please don't be sick," said Mr. Wonka. "Try and stop me," said Mrs. TV. Then you better take this, said Mr. Wonka, and he grabbed his magnificent black hat off the top of his head and held it out upside down from front of Mrs. TV's mouth. Make this awful thing stop, said Mr. TV. Can't do that, said Mr. Wonka. It won't stop till we get there. I only hope there's no one using the other elevator at the time. What other elevator? Asked Mrs. TV. The one that goes the opposite direction on the same track as this one, said Mr. Wonka. Holy mackerel, cried Mr. TV. You mean we're going to have a collision? I've always been lucky so far, said Mr. Wonka. Now I am going to be sick, said Mrs. Wonka. No, no, said Mr. Wonka. Not now. We're nearly there. Don't spoil my hat. The next moment there was screams of grief, and the elevator began to slow down. Then it stopped altogether. Some ride, said Mr. TV, wiping great sweat from his forehead. Never again, gasped Mrs. TV. And then the doors opened. Now, everybody listen to me, said Mr. Wonka. I want everybody to be very careful in this room. There is dangerous stuff around here, and you must not tamper with it. Chapter 26. The Television Chocolate Room. The TV family, together with Charlie and Grandpa Joe, stepped out into the elevator into a room so dazzling bright and dazzling white that they seemed screwed up in the eyes in pain and stopped walking. Mr. Wonka handed each of them a pair of dark glasses and said, Put these on quick, and don't take them off whatever you do. The light could blind you. As soon as Charlie had his dark glasses on, he was able to look around in comfort. He saw a long, narrow room. The room was painted white all over. Even the floor was white, and there wasn't a speck of dust anywhere. From the ceilings, huge lamps hung down and bathed the room in a brilliant blue-white light. The room was completely bare, except for the far ends. At one of those ends, there was an enormous camera on wheels, and a whole army of Oompa Loompas was clustering around it, oiling its joints and adjusting its knobs and polishing its great glass lens. The Oompa Loompas were all dressed in the most extraordinary way. They were wearing bright red spacesuits, complete with helmets and goggles. At least they looked like spacesuits, and they were working in complete silence. Watching them, Charlie experienced a quite sense of danger. There was something dangerous about this whole business, and the Oompa Loompas knew it. There was no chattering or singing among them, and they moved about over the huge black cameras slowly and carefully in their scarlet spacesuits. At the other end of the room, about 50 paces away from the camera, a single Oompa Loompa, also wearing a spacesuit, was sitting at a black table, gazing at the screen of a very large television set. Here we go, cried Mr. Wonka, hopping up and down with excitement. This is the testing room for my latest and greatest invention, television chocolate. But what is television chocolate? Asked Mike TV. Good heavens, child, stop interrupting me, said Mr. Wonka. It works by television. I don't like television myself. I suppose it's all right in small doses, but children never seem to be able to take it in small doses. They want to sit there all day staring at the screen, staring at the screen, staring at the screen. That's me, said Mike TV. Shut up, said Mr. TV. Thank you, said Mr. Wonka. I shall now tell you how this amazing television of mine works. But first of all, do you know how ordinary television works? It is very simple. At one end, where the picture is being taken, you have a large camera, and you start photographing something. The photographs are split up into millions of tiny pieces, which are so small that you can't see them, and these pieces are shot out into the sky by electricity. In the sky, they go whizzing around all over the place until suddenly they hit an antenna on somebody's roof of somebody's house. Then they go flashing down the wire that leads back to the television set, and in there they get jiggled and joggled around until every last single one of the millions of tiny little pieces is fit back into its right place, just like a jigsaw puzzle. And presto! The photograph appears on the screen. That isn't exactly how it works, said Mike TV. I'm a little deaf in my left ear, said Mr. Wonka. You must forgive me, I don't hear everything you say. I said that it isn't exactly how it works, shouted Mike TV. You're a nice boy, Mr. Wonka said, but you talk too much. Now then, the very first time I saw an ordinary television work, I was struck by a tremendous idea. Look here, I shouted. If these people can break a photograph into millions of pieces and send the pieces whizzing through the air and put them together again, why can't I do the same thing with a bar of chocolate? Why can't I send a real bar of chocolate whizzing through the air in tiny pieces and then put it on the pieces together on the other end, all ready to be eaten? Impossible, said Mike TV. You think so? Cried Mr. Wonka. Well, watch this. I shall now send a bar of my very best chocolate from one end of the room to the other by television. Get ready there. Bring in the chocolate. Immediately 6 Oompa Loompas marched forward, carrying on their shoulders the most enormous bar of chocolate Charlie had ever seen. It was about the size of the mattress he slept on at home. Okay. How do we go? It has to be big, Mr. Wonka explained. Because whenever you send something by television, it always comes out much smaller than it went in. Even with an ordinary television, when you photograph a big man, he never comes onto your screen any taller than a pencil. Here we go then. All right, get ready. No, stop. Hold everything. You there. Mike TV, stand back. You're too close to the camera. There are dangerous rays coming out of that thing. They could break you up into a million tiny pieces in 1 second. That's why the Oompa Loompas are wearing spacesuits. The suits protect them. All right, that's better. Now then, switch on. One of the Oompa Loompas caught hold of a large switch and pulled it down. There was a blinding flash. The chocolate's gone! Shouted Grandpa Joe, waving his arms. He's quite right. The whole enormous bar of chocolate has disappeared completely into thin air. It's on its way, said Mr. Wonka. It is now rushing through the air above our heads in a million tiny pieces. Quick, come over here. He dashed to the other end of the room where the large television set was standing, and the others followed him. Watch the screen, he cried. Here it comes. Look! The screen flickered and lit up. Then suddenly a small bar of chocolate appeared in the middle of the screen. Take it, shouted Mr. Wonka, growing more and more excited. How can you take it? Asked Mike TV, laughing. It's a picture on a television screen. Charlie Bucket, Mr. Wonka said. You take it. Reach out and grab it. Charlie put out his hand and touched the screen. And suddenly, miraculously, a bar of chocolate came away in his fingers. He was so surprised he nearly dropped it. Eat it, said Mr. Wonka. Go on, eat it. It'll be delicious. It's the same bar. It's gotten smaller from the journey, that's all. That's fantastic, gasped Grandpa Joe. It's a miracle. Just imagine, cried Mr. Wonka, when I start using this across the country, they'll be sitting at home watching television, and suddenly a commercial will flash onto the screen and a voice will say, Eat Wonka's chocolates. They're the best in the world. If you don't believe us, simply try one for yourself now. And you'll simply reach out and take one. How about that, eh? Terrific, said Grandpa Joe. It will change the world. And that is chapter 26. Tomorrow we'll read chapter 27 and 28.